Hola, mujeres. In today's episode, we continue to talk about self-care as this is a focus for Bold Latinas in 2024. You guys know that. But we will be incorporating personal finance in our conversation with a special guest. Her name is Rita Soledad Fernandez, who is the CEO of Wealth Para Todos, a financial coaching company focused on empowering BIPOC women and LGBTQ plus communities to achieve financial independence through deep self-care. Through one-on-one coaching, Wealth Para Todos Academy, a weekly newsletter, and social media content, Soledad provides clients and followers with the knowledge so they can actually work because they want to, not because they have to. So with that, we would like to welcome Rita Soledad to our podcast and are ready to dive into a great conversation today about self-care and financial freedom. So welcome to our podcast, Rita Soledad.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, Rita, we do have a few questions for you, but before we know that, we have this is going to be a very rich conversation and talking about self-care and financial freedom, and specifically for Latinas in our community. But before we do that, we do want to know about you. So, if you can share a little bit about yourself, your story, and how you actually started, and where you currently are today in your professional career.
Yeah. Okay. So everybody listening, I'm Rita Soledad. You can call me Soledad. You can call me Sol. I am a queer Mexican American who grew up in Los Angeles. I was, I was raised in a very Catholic family in a neighborhood that was low income. There was a lot of gun violence in my neighborhood, and I just wasn't exposed to people with my identity, with my background, having financial security. The only time I saw people with dinero, it was when I went to Disneyland. And I only went to Disneyland like two times in my entire life. And I grew up here in Los Angeles, so close, right? So I didn't grow up with examples of what it was like to be financially secure. What I had a lot of examples of is financial insecurity. And also, despite financial insecurity, like a lot of joy and pleasure just from like the family getting together and having parties and dancing and drinking together. So I didn't feel like I was poor. In so many ways, I felt like I was good. I didn't know anything else until I went to college. And then when I went to college, I was like, oh, damn, I'm a minority. I didn't know that because I had grown up in a neighborhood where there was so many Latinos, there were so many Asian people, so many Black people. And once I went to college, that's when I first was like, oh, okay, I'm a minority. And then I also was like, oh, I really, really didn't grow up with money. And that's something that I kind of like internalized for a while. And I was just very determined to go to college, get a degree, get a job, and have a job that like would provide me with vacation time. That to me was like making it. And when I got my job and I got my bachelor's and my master's, I thought I was good. I was able to travel cada vez en cuando. In my 20s, I was able to eat out at restaurants. And so I thought like I made it. I have more money than, my family. My family didn't always get to travel. I mean, like we would travel back to Mexico, but I was traveling to Jamaica, to Aruba, to, different countries, not just the homeland. And so I thought I was good until I was 32 years old and I got sick. I was working as a math teacher at that time. And I got sick and I was put on medical leave and had to start collecting disability checks. It was the same time that my husband's company had to be shut down. So I was 32 with two kids, and the only income that we had coming our way were my disability checks. And that was the first time in my adult life where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how we're going to pay the bills. I don't like, there was so much uncertainty. And I was also sick on bed rest. And so I started to read personal finance books and I read a book about budgeting and I got really into it. And I was like, oh, wait, someone like me who like I could like we could actually create financial security. I don't know, like I had such low financial literacy that I didn't even know like there's actually just steps. There's actually just steps that you have to take to become financially secure. And so as I read these books, I went a long time of like, no, like that doesn't really work for me because I live in a city. I live in LA. It has high expenses. I have children. I'm already in my 30s, you know, so I thought like this isn't going to apply to me. It can't work with me. But then I decided to just try and see. Like, let's see if I could figure this out. So one of the first goals I had was to pay off my debt, my student loan debt, which after 10 years of payments, I still had $23,000 of student loan debt. I decided to create a budget, use extra cash flow to pay off my student loan debt, and then I wanted to build a 6-month emergency fund. But that was going to mean saving $30,000. And I did not think that was possible when I shared with everybody, like, oh, I paid off my student loans. I'm debt free before 33 on Instagram, my personal account. Not one person said, yay, or felicidades, or nothing. So I thought, damn, I must be the only one with debt. I must like, no one's celebrating me because everyone else is like, that's basic. Like, oh, you have debt? Like, that's what I thought. And so I created an anonymous account on Instagram. At the time, it was called Generational Wealth Para Todos. Later on, I changed it to Wealth Para Todos. And it was an anonymous account where I was talking dinero, not showing my face, sharing like my journey and my goal to try to save $30,000 because I wanted a community. I wanted people who would like talk dinero with me, who would cheer me on, who would say, here's some tips. But I also had a lot of vergüenza and I was nervous about talking dinero. And because I had talked to my own friends and even like sent them a text message and none of them responded, I really thought, damn, I'm not supposed to talk about dinero. And even my husband was like, so you have to have an anonymous account, like, no se debe hablar de dinero
Mhm.
online. And that was just kind of the vibe. And then after a few months of this social media account, I was like, you know what? I really want to learn to talk dinero with confianza. I want to model for everybody else the importance of talking dinero. And so I did. I showed my face. And as soon as I started showing my face, people started coming to me saying, like, oh, can you do a workshop? Can you teach me how to budget? Can you do this? And I had like deep imposter syndrome. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, I'm not a financial expert. I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher. And they're like, okay, well then teach me how to budget. And I was like, no, let me connect you with somebody else. So I went all of 2020 pretty much being like that. But then by 2021, I was like, okay, let me start just playing with the idea of doing this. And by the end of October 2021, I decided to like really focus on being a money coach. And then when I started working with my clients, what I saw was that there were some people who were able within 6 months to pay off $30,000 of debt, max out a retirement account. And then there was people who couldn't. And I was like, why? Why are some people able to do it and other people are not? Like, I'm the same coach, I'm saying the same thing to them. And that's when I realized it had to do with their self-care routines. And I realized like overwhelmed, exhausted, overstimulated people cannot engage in financial planning. So, in order to take steps so that you can become financially independent, you actually have to be engaging in self care first. But people don't even know what self care means. Like, I know personally, I thought self care was getting my nails done and going to get my hair straightened out or getting a massage. That's how I defined self-care for so long. But I got very curious, started studying because I was like, I need to teach all my clients how to do it, which is why I created an acronym, diverse, to stand for the 7 types of self-care. And now I call myself a money and self-care coach.
Awesome.
I love that. It's like you're speaking your love language. So, okay, this is as you're probably like, oh my gosh, where did you find this gem? Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. Self-care first, then for financial focus. And I'm sure many of us are thinking about that because even for this year, my husband would always tell me, hey, make an extra payment. And I'm like, oh, well, the mortgage said they don't do that. And this year I finally decided, I'm like, okay, I'm going to pay $400 extra every month because it's like, we've been living in this house for 5 years and it's like still almost the same of what we owe versus 5 years ago. And it's just like, it felt really good. And I also could relate to that on when I saw I already paid off my car. So now I can start investing in a property and I never really got anything. I'm like, oh, so it's like everything you've been saying. I'm also in my 30s. I'm also like, oh, I thought, people would be excited or like my parents. And then I just want to add on to that, wow, anonymous account. So with anyone out there, if you have a passion like this, like Rita Soledad started out anonymous, and you'll be seeing you build that community because it really is powerful, that influence that our circle could sometimes bring us down. And then I loved how you emphasize on imposter syndrome. I can totally relate to that because I've also been trying to do like a side hustle coach since I grew up in family businesses, and I have that so much. Like I hired a coach so I could be a coach. and and she's always telling me like, you got it all. You gotta get all these limiting beliefs out of you. So I wanted to touch on the limiting beliefs because for us, we're always like, oh, no, pues esos son los blanquitos que pueden ser ricos porque ellos son los que invierten en bolsa de valores. They're the ones that they get life insurance before they're even born. They're the ones that, they pass things down. And no, we also could do that. We also could start doing that with our own kids. So even um, like that, John and I believe a lot in vision boards, and that has been something big on mine. It's like, okay, I'm guilty, haven't opened like a college tuition account, but I said I want to have at least one property for each child. So that could be whatever they want to do. They want to go to college or not, there's something there for them. So to me, that's already like building generational wealth because it's like we don't really grow up saying like, oh, I'm going to leave this to you for you. It's always like one of our parents passed away, unfortunately, and then everyone's fighting for like inheritance, and it's not even that much. So I love how you just gave that storytelling. I'm like, oh my gosh, bing, bing, bing. Can relate so much to that. So diverse. I know I've seen a little bit on your Instagram, and the one that stuck to me the most is the the environmental one, because I remember you were doing a challenge for that one. But if you could go a little bit deeper into the diverse self care, because I was really so intrigued with that, and I was like, wow, like yes, finances, that self care, and it's just like every little thing, like when you said pay off $30,000 in 1 year, and it's like every little penny counts, and it's like when you have that focus and that intention and overall that big why, then you know why you're not gonna go and order that Uber Eats at midnight. You're gonna be like, oh, those $20 is for this XY. So going to that, I get passionate, so I will stop talking.
Okay, so like I said, diverse self-care is an acronym for the 7 types of self-care that keep you in a cycle that leads to reaching financial independence with lots of cariño and also con tiempo. Okay, and financial independence is that time when you have enough money in your investment accounts or real estate. You have enough assets that you work because you want to, not because you have to. So that's what I'm trying to get like everyone on board with, right? Setting themselves up so that they can retire early, reach financial independence. Dinero self-care is the first one. Okay, so diverse, again, the D stands for dinero self-care, and this is any type of task that helps you support your making smart financial decisions and encourages financial security. So it's creating a budget, it's checking in with your accounts, it's developing your financial literacy, reading financial books, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, learning about how to invest in the stock market, learning about the different types of retirement accounts, doing your taxes. Those are all examples of dinero self-care. Then we have interpersonal self-care. Interpersonal self-care is anything that helps you build and maintain healthy relationships. So this might mean setting boundaries with your loved ones, going on dates with your partner, having quality time with your children, playing games, eating out at restaurants with your friends, anything that helps maintain a relationship, or even like caring for loved ones. Okay. Then we have vocational self care. Vocational self care helps you maintain satisfaction in your work and helps prevent burnout. So it's sticking to work boundaries, working between a certain amount of hours, engaging in professional development, figuring out ways to increase your income in a way that's also aligned with your own passions. It is asking for a raise, applying for a promotion, job hopping. Those are all examples of vocational self care. Then we have emotional self care. Emotional self care is going to nurture your emotional health and support your mental well being. This can include therapy. I am a big fan of therapy and Roth IRAs. Those are the two things that once I started to use my time, money, and energy with, I just saw a lot of growth in myself. So therapy is an example. Also reading books about different, personal development books about setting boundaries, understanding your emotions, communicating your needs, figuring out your attachment style, which also is related to interpersonal self-care. Anything that is really going to help you nurture the way that you interact with your emotions, because we all have emotions that make us feel, circumstances that make us feel insecure, that make us feel inadequate, that make us feel embarrassed, that shame creeps in. And then we have this cruel and critical voice that comes out. And it's important to learn how to feel the emotions and be very intentional about what actions you take. So emotional self-care involves all those practices, including journaling. There's so many there. Then we have restorative body self-care. This is activities that improve your physical health and your vitality. I think a lot of people, when I tell them, like, oh, when I ask, what are your self-care routines? They're like, oh, I go to the gym 3 times a week. And I'm like, cool. What else? And so I think restorative body self-care is one that is like a little bit more common, besides the stuff like getting our nails done and massages. And this is going to be, start off with the basics. Are you sleeping enough? Are you drinking water? Are you eating enough protein? Are you regulating your blood sugar? Are you engaging in movement? These are all tasks related to taking care of your physical health. Then spiritual self-care encourages you to connect with your values and what gives your life purpose. Sometimes this is practicing a religion, but it's not just a religion. It could also be your faith. It could be manifestations, vision boards, scripting, different activities that help you really connect with a higher purpose. It could also come from spending time in nature. And then the last one, environmental self-care. And environmental self-care helps you promote living in a clean, organized, and pleasing environment. So these are the 7 types of self-care. And I saw with my clients, the ones who were able to pay off the most debt, invest the most money, increase their income the most, it's because they were really good at engaging in diverse self-care.
That's awesome. I do have a question for you, Rita Soledad, and it's about, diverse, and then you have to focus on all those different areas for self-care. But what happens when, let's say someone has a really big, I don't know, let's say like $30,000 debt, and they know they have to pay that. And then they have these other priorities, right? Like you said, like kids and all these other things. But you said we also have to take care of ourselves, right? Self-care. So we got to go out and have dinner with our loved ones and do the things that, make us fill our cup or whatever. How did you manage to do those things? Because you have to spend money to do that, right? Like you have this debt, but then you also have to spend money to be able to, that self-care. So how did you, what tips do you have for that? Like, how would someone manage that?
Yeah. So the first thing is you want to learn how to create a budget. And I call my budget a self-care spending plan, because in the very beginning of the month, I'm intentional about how I am going to use my money to spend on self-care. And I actually suggest that people decide what their proactive self-care expenses are as soon as they get paid. And that is a thing that happens is that when you're not thinking proactively about your self-care, when shit hits the fan and life starts lifing, you're going to spend on self-care anyways. But when you don't do it proactively, then you're doing it reactively. And if you're doing it reactively, you may not have the cash ready to do it, which that means you're like swiping a credit card instead. So I say, and start your budget first identifying with your proactive self-care expenses. Are you going to be going to therapy? Are you going to make sure to be eating out? When I paid off my debt, I was not like, oh, hay comida en la casa. I was not that way. There was no way I was going to spend cooking every single meal as my way to have extra cash flow. So in my budget, I made sure that I had money to eat out and that we were not going to be cooking all the time. That was a proactive self-care expense because ordering food or going out to eat meant that I didn't have to worry about washing dishes. I didn't have to worry about like a long day and then cooking right afterwards. And I think people need to be intentional about that. So identifying your proactive self-care expenses first, then looking at your fixed expenses. These are the things that cost the same amount every single month or quarter, right? That you need to sustain your lifestyle. Then your variable expenses. These are things that you need to sustain your lifestyle, but they're going to vary. So your fixed expenses, it costs the same amount, like a mortgage payment, your cell phone, your internet, right? These are the same amount every single month. Variable expenses, like you need food to eat. You're going to spend on groceries, but the amount may vary. Paying for gas, that amount may vary. Gifts, that amount may vary. So being, getting curious about your variable expenses, then your minimum debt payments, savings, and investments. When you feel like you don't have enough cash to do it all, I don't believe in cutting back. I have found it's more important to increase your income. There is a limit to how much you can decrease your expenses by. There's no limit when it comes to how much you can increase your income by. But a lot of people are like, it's easier to decrease my expenses. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not easier to decrease your expenses. It might be a little bit more familiar, but there's limits to it. And when it comes to increasing your income, then that means that you're going to really have to sit with the thoughts and beliefs that you have about yourself. And that can get hard, which is why it's important to engage in emotional self-care. And it's all related.
I love that. So now at the beginning, I was like, oh, don't order, at midnight Uber Eats. So I was wrong. I can still do that. And I don't do that, but, it just came to mind. Been doing
I do it. My DoorDash, I budget for DoorDash.
I've been thinking of...
Sorry. I budget for DoorDash. I think it's $120 a week that I have in my budget that I'm going to do DoorDash. And I know already that I'm going to spend money on that, and I'm fine with that.
Love it. So is there an example that you give to your clients on how to increase their income? Like, is that part of your process as well?
That was going to be my next question, Rita. So because you're saying, because people obviously, like you said, automatically feel like, well, it would be easier for me to work on decreasing my spending to be able to accomplish those things rather than increase my income. And that's, to me, like, it's kind of difficult because it's like, okay, how am I going to do that? First, am I going to get a new job, a raise, like a side hustle? Like, how would you support people? Like, what's your recommendation? How do you coach people to do those things? Because that can be a little, hard to do.
And it's going to be very hard for anyone who's not engaging in diverse self-care. So when you're already feeling overwhelmed, the idea of, what? I'm supposed to increase my income. I'm going to take time away from my family to like work on my resume, or I'm going to, try to go network. Like that feels like, I can't do that. Which is why number one thing when I'm working with my clients is I audit their self-care practices and we start to set up what their self-care routines are going to be on a daily basis. And you have to start there. You have to start like being able to identify for the 7 types of self-care, what are the things that you're going to do each day in each category. And you meet yourself where you're at, right? So if like dinero self-care, if right now you're somebody who doesn't even look at your finances, and all you got to do every single day, focus on for 3 months, checking in, downloading the apps to your bank accounts, putting them on your cell phone, and every day I check my accounts. I look at my accounts. I look at my credit card statements. I look at the transactions. Boom. That's really not a self-care. Build that habit. Then interpersonal self-care. Part of that might mean like this is very common for my clients who are married and with kids. It's about sharing responsibilities with their partners and having conversations about what day am I cooking? What day are you cooking? What day am I in charge of doing the laundry? What day are you in charge of doing the laundry? How are we going to split up taking care of the kids? Having those very explicit conversations with your partner. And I remember when I first had my kids, I thought I had to do everything related to my kids. I thought like I couldn't even go to the gym and leave my kids with their father because I'm their mom. I'm supposed to be with them. I'm supposed to take care of everything. And I was doing everything kid related while also taking care of everything for my job and also taking care of everything for the house. And part of my interpersonal self-care was going to marriage counseling and going to couples counseling because I was like, I want to live a certain type of life and I feel like I can't. And it's not fair. It's not fair. And my husband, he's like, I'm not even machista, but you need to be able to tell me, ask for support, tell me what you need. And that was so hard for me. Asking for support, to explaining what I needed was so hard because I thought like, oh, that means I'm failing. That means I'm not, super mom who can do it all. So interpersonal self-care for, someone in that situation would be like, ask for help every day. Ask for, oh, can you go start the wash? Can you go take care of filling up the gas? Like that is an example of where somebody could start. For vocational self-care, start to brainstorm, journal about the ways that you wish that you could make money. And just let your brain like start to open up to the possibility. For emotional self-care, when you find yourself nervous or scared or frustrated, can you focus on taking deep breaths? And I'm going to notice what I'm feeling. I'm going to validate it. I'm going to say, it's okay. It's totally normal that I'm having these emotions. It's okay. Sana to yourself. And then that would be your form of emotional self-care. Restorative body self-care. Like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating 3 times a day? We don't even have to add exercise into that if you're already not eating enough protein and enough nutrients. Meet yourself where you're at. Then spiritual self-care, maybe you spend some time praying, or you just are writing in a gratitude journal, talking about the things that you're grateful for. Training your brain to notice everything that you're really good at and everything's already good in your life. And then environmental self-care, you set a timer for 10 minutes and you said, okay, I'm going to pick up a little. I'm going to organize. I'm going to do things poco a poco. So first, audit your self-care practices. When you get really good about showing up for yourself intentionally and thinking about these things in the 7 ways, and you're like, okay, then you increase your capacity to add more to your plate. But there's no increasing your income when you're feeling depleted. That's why diverse self-care comes first.
Love that. I'm just trying to think. I'm like, should I ask for an example of have you had, I know for, as you said, mom, that stuck out to me. Do you have an example or a testimony you could share on someone that came in with like a negative mindset? Because I loved how you said you train your brain to notice what you're good at, and then you take that positive thing, and that's how you really implement diverse. How then they, like, what were those small habits that they had to create? Like, I don't know. I love storytelling. So you have a story that would be great to share.
Oh, I have so many stories.
But it's just like, I just feel like us moms could relate so much because we're always like, well, how can I fit in one more thing? By 8 p.m., I want to go to bed with them too.
You know what? The ones that I feel that I'm really, really proud of are the single moms that come and work with me. Right.
And you know what? I was going to ask that. I was like, okay, because you mentioned that was going to be my follow-up. You mentioned like, okay, because if you have a partner and you have kids, like you can ask you went to marriage counseling, so your partner understands that he has to support you. And that way you have more time to do all the other things, right? But what about the women that do not have a partner to be able to do that, and they're single and they have to take care of their kids, but they don't have that much support, or yes, they're single too, but then they also don't have a lot of family around them or help and support to be able to do those things. So like, what would be their recommendation then?
For sure. So the single moms that I've worked with, I would say for the most part, they've had access to family support in some sense. However, they've had to learn how to navigate setting boundaries with that family support, right? So, yes, you have your mom that helps you with taking care of your kids after school. Cool. You appreciate that. You value that. What you don't appreciate is your mom then talking little ish about your house being a mess, or oh, you need to be dating someone, or oh my goodness, ya te estás engordando, like all of that. And learning to set boundaries with their mother so that they felt comfortable getting the support that they needed, while also being able to it not be an energy leak for them, right? Because it's one thing of like, ask for support, get the support that you need so that maybe you can go on a walk and have a little alone time. But then if somebody's going to be there criticizing you, then that's not going to really feel like self-care. But it's all skills. It's skills. But I'm trying to I'm thinking of one single mom who first gen, born in Mexico, was 23 years old when she had her first child. Didn't know that she was pregnant until she was 7 months. Okay, so at 7 months, 23 years old, she finds out like, oh my goodness, she's going to be a mom, and she has 2 months to prepare to be a mom. She was in a relationship. Eventually, she left the partner because he cheated on her. She then he had cheated on her while she was pregnant with her second child, and she was just like, had debt with credit card debt repeatedly over and over again. And then she came to me and she's like, okay, that's it. Like, I really want to figure out my finances for myself and also for my daughters. And I was like, okay. And part of her thing was she was just like, I'm busy. Like, I never even have a moment to myself. I can never, like, there's always something. I'm either like driving to go to work, taking care of everything at work. And then I come home and I have to, pick up the kids from school. And then I have to make sure that I cook. And then, I'm taking care of doing the laundry and I'm doing this. And I'm just like, okay, let's start working on what you're going to delegate. And for her, delegating, like, her kids were on the older side. The youngest one was already in middle school, but they weren't helping with laundry. They weren't helping with making the bed. They weren't helping with cooking. And she was still taking care of all of that. And so it was like, first, what about delegating to your kids and asking them to support? But she had to go, like, break through these feelings and these thoughts about like, oh, I'm not a good mom. I'm not a good mom if I'm not doing everything all the time for everyone else. And so she had to learn to start pulling her energy back, her time back, and her money back. One of her daughters was old enough to start working, and she wasn't working. And I love her story because she went from like being in credit card debt to being completely debt free to building an emergency fund, maxing out her Roth IRA, increasing her income. She's increased her income multiple times, is now on track to max out her employer retirement account. But in order to do that, she had to learn how to take care of herself first. And so in our coaching sessions, it was a lot of like, I just don't feel good enough. I don't feel like I'm a good enough mom. I feel so bad. I want support and I want help, but I just feel like I'm always going. And part of what she had to realize is like her body's gotten used to it. To go from like go, 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 go to now slow yourself down, to learn to take deep breaths, that's uncomfortable for your body. It's not familiar. And so it felt very uncomfortable for her to not be worrying all the time. But she had to learn to train her brain to do that so she could have some peace, so that she could have some calm, and then actually have the energy to, set up automatic transfers and learn how to invest in the stock market.
Love that. And thank you for sharing that with the boundaries, because I myself, um, my mom and my mother-in-law are the caregivers for my kids, but I always feel guilty of asking them to take care of them if it's not for work. Because I say, I already have their support for me to work. How am I going to tell them, hey, I'm going to go out with Jana every Saturday now afternoon? Just for an example. And that's going to be like my self care. Like, I feel extremely guilty about that. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, especially in the Latina environment, that we have our moms or abuelas or tias taking care of our children. And then it's like, that's our only support system. But you're like, I already burnt them out Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. It's like, okay, where do I go? So thank you for sharing that.
And what I would challenge people in that situation is like, okay, if you have childcare from 8 to 5, then you make sure that your lunch hour at work is your self-care hour. For me, I engage in self-care as soon as I wake up in the morning. To me, I can get my 7 types of self-care, most of them done within 1 hour. I wake up at 5 in the morning before my kids wake up so that I could have that 1 hour of myself to be able to do things. I trained my body to do that. I wasn't always like a morning person, but I loved how good it felt to engage in all 7 types of self-care that I trained my body to wake up and have that time to myself. But sometimes my kids wake up in the middle of the night and they would, I don't get to get good sleep and it's 5 o'clock and I need to sleep more than engaging in my self-care. So then my lunch hour, 12 to 1, I have my strict boundaries so that I do engage in self-care during that time. And it can be very quick. Like my emotional self-care takes 5 minutes, a 5-minute little journaling prompt, being very intentional about the emotions that I'm going to nurture in a day. So it's learning those tools and those exercises, getting very cute and curious and exploring the things that make you feel good. But before you even get to that point, you need to commit and you need to decide that you're worthy of your own time, money, and energy. And that you don't have to give it all away to everyone else just because you're married, just because you have kids. And that's the biggest shift, because there will be a lot of people who, like my tia, I'm about to travel for business next week. And then the following week, I'm going to Puerto Rico with my husband for an entire week. And he's like, you're going to be away from your kids for 2 weeks. And I said, yeah, it's a real good thing that there's 50 weeks in the year. And people will have their little comments and people will have their little things. And I'm just like, I'm not interested in being a martyr. Just because I'm a mother doesn't mean I'm a martyr. I really want like more, mujeres, more Latinas to decide to like take back their time, their money and energy and decide that they're worthy of it first. And the reality is that when you take really, really good care of yourself, you're actually able to show up for others a lot more. My brother was in the ICU in January and I still stuck to my diverse self-care routines. And I was the one having to make all of his medical decisions. And everyone was all like, how are you not freaking out, Rita Soledad? Like, how are you not crumbling under this very stressful situation? And I was like, because I'm sticking to my diverse self-care. I was in the ICU and I was like, oh, time for me to go on a little walk. Gotta take my little walk. And that really showed me like, wow, taking care of myself is really the key to being able to take care of everyone else better.
A quick tip to us that we get the pointing fingers like, pero ella se cree, pero mírala. How do you create boundaries with that?
For me, I think the biggest thing was just deciding on my own that I'm worthy of my own time, money, and energy. And then people can talk. People can talk and people can say their things. And I like sometimes I say a little something back to them. But most of the time I'm just like, you should engage in diverse self-care too. Follow me on Instagram. I talk about it all the time.
That's where I was at. Like, how can we start educating our culture on to normalize that? Got it. Send them to Wealth Para Todos.
Yeah, send them over here. I'm actually currently right now working on a course all about diverse self-care, sharing, how to create your own diverse self-care plan so that you can engage in it daily. And the people that I'm gonna like send it to first is my mom and my tia, who were like my mother figures, and I want them to test it because I know that they're gonna be the ones who are most resistant And the
Yes.
ones who are gonna like pick it apart the most, and I'm like, perfect. I need to see, because that's the thing, that the people who need self-care the most are the ones who are always knocking other people down for engaging in it.
Yeah. I love that. Thank
Agreed.
you so much. That was very helpful.
And then I was gonna say that you mentioned that if you're working, let's say you're a full-time employee and you get your lunchtime. I know that personally I'm guilty of not necessarily taking the lunch and like working through my lunch. So I feel like it's really important to I know, I know, to challenge ourselves, right? To engage in, other like self-care activities rather than like just spending that 1 hour that you should get for yourself, and have your lunch and do whatever it is you need to do to be able to, I don't know, take care of yourself. Because again, like, I don't know, it's just like a thing now that like I don't think about it. Like I just do it, and next thing you know, it's like
Mhm.
4 p.m. and I forgot that I had to have lunch or eat at all. So I don't know. It's just really
I
difficult to
know.
have to change that, because it's now like engraved in me that I'm like, oh, whatever. Like I'll just keep working because I have to get this done. So I don't know. Like, what tips do you
Mhm.
have for us that don't really challenge ourselves to take care of ourselves, like during our lunchtime or before we go into work or after we come home from work and we have to engage on those like regular, mom activities or cooking and doing the laundry and
Mhm.
doing homework with the kids, even though you want to do other things, but you just feel like you can't because like everyone depends on you, regardless of whether you have a partner or help
Mhm.
or not.
Yeah. Well, first I just want to validate and say like I feel you. I've been there. When I was a teacher, I was getting paid pennies, working 12-hour days, Monday through Friday, and then I would still take home work and lesson plan and grade on Sundays. And that was before I had my kids. Then after I had my kids, I still was working those long hours. I would come home. My house was like, my laundry was always like, I'd be happy if I had clean clothes, but the clothes were never folded. I would just keep them in the crib. And I was just like, okay. And I felt like work got a lot of me versus more of my family and my partner. And the thing is, like, you have to realize it's not sustainable. The day is going to come when you start having conflicts with your partner because you're not having good quality time with them. The day is going to come when you have issues with your children because they're only getting like a stressed out version of you versus a playful version of you. And so part of this is like really deciding like what do you really need that's going to make you feel a little bit more calmer, a little more peaceful, a little bit more joyful. And you focus on doing that one thing daily, literally daily. And so for me, I write down every single day my diverse self care intentions, what I'm planning to do in each of these categories. And as I complete them, I check them off. I'm monitoring it, I'm recording it, I'm tracking that I'm actually engaging in the self care. And when I don't engage in the self care, I get cute and curious about why. So yesterday was Valentine's Day. And I started looking at my calendar. I was supposed to spend 15 minutes on my taxes. The next thing you know, I spent 45 minutes on my taxes. That put me behind schedule. And I looked at my self-care intentions and I was like, okay, what am I willing to let go of for today? And I was like, I'm not gonna do laundry today. I'm not gonna do the dishes. And I just took that off of my schedule. And I was like, if that's what it's gonna be. Then I started looking at my work stuff. And I was like, okay, I have this to do list of things I wanted to get done at work. Well, what is not going to get done today so that I can still make sure to go on a walk and have like a calm lunch? It's making those little choices, getting very like flexible with it. But you have to always decide like, I'm worthy. I'm worthy of my own time, money, and energy. And I don't have to keep giving it away to my employer, to, my family, to other people. It actually starts like the more I take care of myself first, the better. But it's gonna take like you literally like for you, you might need to set timers on your phone, alarm clocks that go off. And if a whole hour of taking your lunch feels like too stressful, okay, what about 30 minutes? What 30 minutes you could eat and work, and the other 30 minutes can you walk? Oh, that's too much? Okay, what about 40 minutes? 40 minutes you're eating and working, but you take 20 minutes to engage in self-care. Meet yourself where you're at, and then poco a poco you start to increase it to get more of what you need and more of what you deserve.
So, una pregunta para ti. ¿Qué herramientas, so like what tools do you use to track those things essentially? So whether it be, I'm assuming you maybe have that already for those like your clients, but like, for budgeting, for like tracking your self-care every day for each of those, so for diverse, for each of those letters, like do you have resources where you like track that?
Yeah, if you look on my Instagram stories, you'll see a lot of times that I'm sharing how I use it. So anyone who's listening, like I'm always sharing how I'm engaging in my diverse self-care. You'll see the apps that I use. So one app, I have an iPhone, but even if you have an Android, you can use like a note-taking app and you just write down the list of what you're going to engage in. And then you check it off, or like a reminder, like a list app, right? And you're just checking it off. For my clients, I do provide them with different tools. There's like softwares that I provide them in terms of for their financial planning. But then I also have Google Sheets and little workbooks where we have habit trackers. So it is, and when my free course, I'm coming out with a free diverse self-care course. When that course comes out, all of those handouts, all of those resources are going to be part of the course. And it's going to be a course that teaches you how to engage in diverse self-care daily. And I hope everybody listening signs up for the course, downloads all the resources, and really decide like, okay, this is the year that I am going to master diverse self-care.
I love that. Can't wait to see them. I'll be creeping up on your stories every single day. That's gonna be my self-care. Add to my calendar, check Wealth Para Todos story intentionally every single day to see when it comes
It could
out.
be part of your interpersonal self-care,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like somebody who responds to my DMs. So part of your interpersonal self-care be like, oh, let me surround myself with people who have similar values, who are working on the same things I want to work on. Before I had like my group of people that I have now who engage in dinero, who have their own businesses, who invest, who, work on their like personal development. Before I had that, I was like, okay, let's use social media for it. And I just like scrolled other people, and I had to look for examples of Latinas who were budgeting and Latinas who were investing, because in my family, it was like investing in the stock market. That sounds sketchy, but I had to look for the people who I was like, well, there's somebody else there doing it. Let me expose myself to that. And as you start to expose yourself, like, you keep checking my Instagram stories, the next thing you know, you're going to be like, yeah, Soledad cleans in 10 minutes. It's real quick if I get all hands on deck. Oh, let me try that. Or, Soledad is doing, like, I had someone DM me today and they sent me a message. I'm going to like read it to you guys. It was like, I want to share that I just had a proud moment. I'm in my car eating dinner that I brought to a physical therapy appointment because I didn't have time to eat before coming. And I caught myself being mean to myself. My internal dialogue was criticizing me for overbooking myself today, for not accounting enough time for me to get my breaks and to eat. But then your forgiveness prayers that you've been sharing on Instagram stories and your teachings about doing things with cariño and being kind to myself came in. My internal dialogue became something like, I forgive myself for not honoring my needs and my body. I'm grateful for all my body does. It's okay, and I forgive myself. And then she said, thank you for reminding me that I'm important. I know I'm going to do better. Aww. And I responded, oh my God, thanks so much for sharing. Here's a link of more prayers that you can work on. So I'm like, I still respond to all my Instagram DMs. And then she was like, oh, MJ, thank you for sharing. Crying face. So you want to surround yourself with people who are going to engage in the same type of tasks and activities that you want to engage in, because it just becomes like cool instead of weird.
Yes, love it. That's definitely the circle it's a power of influence. It's like, anda con un cojo, ahorita te voy a ver cogiendo. All right. I mean, that's what I grew up hearing. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up. I wish we could keep talking. I know for sure. I wish I could keep learning more.
Invite me back for another episode.
Oh yeah, for other
diverse
topics.
We would love to do. We would love to do it. So we have a self-care course that we just launched this year. So I'm sure that they interrelate a lot. It's not as much focused on financials, but is understanding what's the importance of self-care and then creating a plan. Like, where are you in this moment of life? Because self-care changes depending on what's going on in life. Because as you said, lifing. So it would be great if we could come back, like let's say you take our course and we take your course and we have another dialogue on how we felt about these courses, and then just keep offering them to our fellow Latinas. So thank you so much for being here. Do you have any closing remarks? Feel free, Rita Soledad. If not, I'll just share some closing remarks on what I thought was. I want to say everything, but I always give a little summary.
Yeah, I think I just want everyone here, I want everyone listening to understand that you are worthy of the deepest and diverse forms of self-care. And if you feel guilty, then that just means that somebody has brainwashed you to think that you're not worthy. And don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Like, get rid of the brainwashing. Look at your beliefs. Like, I want everyone listening to know, like, you're so worthy. You're so deserving of diverse self-care.
I love it. So as Rita Soledad mentioned, daily choose that one thing that you are feeling good about yourself with and focus on that intentionally. Like we have said it before, book on your calendar self-care just like you book a meeting. So now, we were talking about not skipping lunch. Put that on your calendar. Hey, what is it that you're going to do in the morning? Put that on your calendar. So let's start being intentional. As Rita mentioned, I loved how also the setting boundaries, that is something very hard, especially in our culture, because since we don't see it growing up, we don't think it's normal. So as you said, let go of those limiting beliefs. You are worthy of that. You are worthy of taking time to do all of that. So thank you so much, Rita. Make sure everyone goes on Instagram and follow Wealth Para Todos, and we'll make sure to put them here in the show notes. And if you were listening to this without taking notes, go back and listen to it and take notes. Go back to Wealth Para Todos link in her bio so that you can start downloading those awesome resources and keep learning more. And be on the lookout for her free diverse self-care course coming out soon. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hasta la próxima. Ciao.
Ciao.